He moved into the non-profit sector in 2008. In his various roles, he has led organizational change, leadership development for social leaders, and worked towards transforming the lives of 10 plus million children from low-income families globally through education solutions that are contextual, simple, and impactful. He is an Aspire Circle Fellow, which is a fellowship of social leaders leveraging collaboration to create a larger impact in society. He also serves on the board of Common Purpose. He is also a thought leader and a TEDx speaker. Computer World magazine had featured him in their People section and he has recently been covered in the Book of Aspiration, featuring the biographic stories of 10 social leaders in India. He has received numerous awards, which include Global Changemaker Award, Innovative CEO Award, Shikshan Ratan Puraskar, Education Legend, Most Impactful Social Innovators Leader, and Education Icon of the Year's Award. Ladies and gentlemen, to speak on the topic, Management of Multi-Campus Operations, Insights and Best Practices, can I please request with a huge round of applause to welcome Mr. Farhad, Merchant among us. Can we have a huge round of applause for him?
Thank you, everyone. And I think before I talk about the management of multi-campus operations, I just wanted to, kind of touch upon the role of multi-campus operations and how it relates to parenting. I think, when I thought about this topic and when it was shared with me yesterday, the first thought that came to my mind is, when you have a chain of schools, units across different locations, they are almost like your own children, where you have got, strengths and weaknesses. You take pride in the nuances and the maturity levels of each one of them. And at the same time, you are worried about things that they may be going through, the challenges that they may be facing, and probably doing things that maybe they shouldn't be doing as well. And there's no operational manual as such for parenting, which covers every single aspect of their lives. In the same way, I think the challenges that come up in handling multi-campus operations also has got nuances and differences which may vary from time to time, and it may not always be possible to have all the right answers. However, what I will try to do, and I think in the introduction, it was shared about my journey moving from the corporate IT sector into the nonprofit sector, most recently with the Aga Khan Education Service India, but I've been on this journey now for the past 16 years. Played roles in different organizations, from a chain of educational institutions to edtech startups to leadership development. And I think with all of them, there are certain strands that pretty much is a learning that I have walked away from. And I think what I'll try to do is share some of these with you and try and talk about how I have taken these learnings and applied them into the Aga Khan Education Service India. I think, most importantly, because we are in the field of education, the change that I see from working in the corporate IT world into the nonprofit sector, into the education sector, is the fact that you get to work with such amazing, passionate people that are trying to make a difference in the world, in society, and, as very unequivocally shared by our guest speaker, I think it was clear that national education policy will take us closer to that destination, to that goal, to help us to and to aspire to kind of achieve some of the objectives that we are all trying to work on. Having said that, I think the first thing that I would like to talk about is the vision and purpose. And I think in any organization, in education, it is far easier to take a vision because there is an ability to enroll people into that vision. I'll go back, probably 2 decades back when I was in the corporate IT world, where I was given the responsibility for a strategic business unit, which was a strategic business unit that was heading testing, and that team had over a period of time, started to get completely demotivated. There was a huge attrition. The team at the time I took over had dropped from 200 people to about 100 people. And I had a conversation with them to try and understand what it was that was resulting in that drop and in that demotivation. And these teams were across multiple locations, so it's very similar. While we talk about, in the education space and, trying to manage operations, it is very similar even in the corporate world, where you have got, people at different locations around the country and around the world as well. And I think what I learned and what I tried to do then is to try to give them a purpose. Just as we talk about, the vision that we have in each of our organizations, like in Aga Khan Education Service India, while it is about education, it is about access to quality education, which is what we're trying to do. So when we have a school in rural Chitrawad where you have children coming from 25 villages in a 35-kilometer radius, because this is the only school that's providing them access to an English education that is of high quality. And regardless of whether our school is based in a rural area, whether it is based in a city like Mumbai or Hyderabad, the kind of quality parameters that we adhere to is something that would be at par with any international level school, national level school, state level school. So I think those aspects is something that we take pride in. We want to make sure that the children are getting the right quality of education. Similarly, we have another instance of a hostel that we run in Hyderabad, where we get children from across India, a lot of rural India, remote parts of Gujarat, Saurashtra, etc., that come to that school. The places where they live, they don't have access to quality education. So the hostel becomes an access ladder for them, where we have a tie-up with a school where they would. So for each of these units, the kind of interventions, the kind of attention that we would need to give to ensure that that quality and that purpose is being met is extremely important. In the case of that corporate sector, the purpose that we redefined, rather than saying that you are doing testing of a software solution, we turned it around to say, can you look at this, that basically we're trying to improve quality of that software. And so if the purpose is clearly given, you get a lot more alliance to that purpose, to that vision. And it's very important to simplify it. Keep it absolutely simple, because when we talk about a vision, sometimes they tend to be, very, very high-end visions, which we need to narrow it down, break it down into goals that every single person in the organization can understand. And that particular, experience 2 decades back turned around that whole department, that business unit from, coming down from 200 to 100, going within 6 months to 400 people, where the people were a lot more motivated. A lot of people from other departments wanted to join that department to become a part of something that was trying to achieve a purpose of improving quality. So I think it's very important to make sure that we define it right, that we convey it in the right manner. And speaking of that, it's a culture that you create in an organization. So just like in the corporate world, in the nonprofit sector, what is most important is making sure that we are communicating very clearly and concisely and transparently what is it that we are trying to achieve. Making sure that every individual in the organization is not just aligned and enrolled to that vision, but takes ownership of that. So the culture of communication, the culture of ownership, such that they are then able to take on the responsibilities to be able to get things done. Now, when we have the diverse set of units across, which we run, let's say, a chain of preschools as well. And just to give you a little bit of background of Aga Khan Education Service India, we have 8 schools, we have a hostel, we have an academy, we have 19 preschools, and of course the central and regional offices that basically run all of this. The central and regional office is a very, very lean team. The focus is largely on making sure that there's a culture of collaboration where all of the units are participatory in what we are trying to do at the organization level. So while there is a large goal that we are trying to achieve, there is also very practical, doable things that the people on the ground would be contributing to. So we have, for example, an academic team where and we have one of our colleagues in the audience here. where this team actually works with the teachers across the system to be able to create that culture, that learning community, to make sure that, the plans are put together, the assessments are centralized, etc. But it's not that it is all top down. So I think, when we spoke about leadership, and, we spoke about in the context of saying that, a leader has to lead from the front, but I think it's also important to make sure that we have our ear to the ground, that we are able to understand what the ground realities are. Our physical presence on the ground at every unit is an extremely important one, making sure that we are all there to understand the nuances and the challenges that they face. It's not easy to have a culture where everything is centralized. So while there are, and finding and striking the right balance is extremely important, but having a difference between a centralized and a decentralized structure, and what elements of your operations need to be centralized vis-a-vis what is it that you would want to decentralize to empower the teams on the ground to be able to make those decisions. And when we talk about decentralized decision making, what are those kind of, and I'll share the examples of what we have tried to do at the Aga Khan schools. What we have is, the budgeting, we centralize the budgeting, but the inputs into the budget are decentralized. So which means that, each of the principals, each of the school leaderships contribute towards the decision making of what should go into that budget, what is it that they plan to do during the year, so that then that budget is something that we are both signed off on. And it is something that allows us to be able to move forward together. And that spirit of collaboration, that that culture that is there, that brings the parties together to take ownership of that vision and that goal, it becomes an extremely powerful one. And then when we break it down to say, okay, fine, so you've taken a budget that is created centrally, what is it that then the schools are doing? Right? Because it's very important that they take that budget and are driving it, but it's also important that you give them, and we spoke about flexibility in the previous session as well. So what kind of flexibility do they have? So on the financial aspects of it, there is a certain flexibility within the scope of the budget, but at the same time, there are appropriate controls that are put in place. Those controls are centralized. Those controls cannot be diluted, because if you start allowing those controls to be diluted, then automatically the entire system can potentially break down. The other things that we do is, ensuring quality. While there is, the delivery responsibility on the field, the quality controls are something that we would centralize. So you have a team that will ensure that, you're monitoring, evaluating, tracking all of the, student numbers, the enrollment numbers, etc., but also in terms of the quality of the output. What is it that we are trying to do? And a lot of times, we realize that it's very easy to take board results and talk about board results. But unfortunately, what happens, and hopefully the NEP will change that, but it is where when you get into grade 10 and you get into grade 12, a lot of focus is on teaching to the test, because it is about making sure that the students are getting 100% results, they're getting top percentages so that they can get into the higher education, colleges and universities. But what happens to that child if they're not given the right foundation in learning? And so right from the very beginning, right from the foundational years, when you talk about even from the preschool, the early childhood education, the carriage of learning is given to the child as much as possible. So you have a child-centered, child-driven learning approach. And while earlier we were focusing that on the preschool children, we expanded that to take care of the foundational stage as part of the national education policy to ensure that grades 1 and 2 also have that carriage. Because what would happen is when we have an independent chain of preschools and these kids would then go on into joining a regular school, the teachers would be extremely flustered because these children would be the ones that would be extremely vocal, confident, asking questions, which is not something that other schools would be very comfortable answering. So they would find it very difficult to deal with children that are so confident at that age, right? At the age of 5 when they come into grade 1. So I think these were some of the things, in terms of making sure that you give them that courage, you give them that responsibility. Children, we spoke about Gen Alpha and Gen Z. I think they are extremely smart. They know, but they need the right environment for learning. And I think one of the things that we've also tried to do is create a culture where technology plays an important role in the learning processes as well. And when I talk about technology, I'm referring to technology for, capacity building of teachers, learning, but also supplementing learning. So it's about making sure that in the classroom, not just in an ICT class where they go in and go into the IT lab and learn about digital tools, but it's about using those tools in a regular learning class, whether they're learning science or maths or English or geography. And I think that has become crucial and has become the crux of the education that we are providing across the Aga Khan schools. We have created this mobile technology labs, little trolleys with laptops in them that go class to class based on the periods. We try and make sure that, as the child is going into higher grades, they get more percentage of time where they are engaging with technologies, because that's really key to the future. So anticipating what these children will need tomorrow, not just what they have today or what they require today, but when they go out into the industry, when they go out into higher education, their ability to be comfortable using technology, which, and I must say that, most of our schools and preschools, the children come from low income to low middle income socioeconomic background. So they don't have access to devices, laptops, etc. in their homes. And what we are trying to do is to make sure that they have this access so that they have that confidence that they can then go out into the real world and be successful in that real world of tomorrow, where this is going to be pretty much the backbone of every industry that we are in. Whether we like it or not, artificial intelligence is here to stay. How do we use it ethically? How do we make sure that the children use it ethically, the teachers use it ethically? How do we make sure that it is leveraged rather than seen as a hindrance, rather than seen as a problem? What is it that we can do to make sure that we strengthen that knowledge, that learning, that understanding, and the application of that knowledge and understanding, so that we can use AI to our benefit? Because in the past, there used to be similar questions that were raised about using calculators. Today, calculators are a given, and you use it in your, colleges and sometimes in your exams as well. So if these are things that have come and they have become part and parcel where there was a huge resistance to them in the past, very similarly, AI is not something that we are going to be able to stop. And I think that is an important one. Another aspect that I would like to talk about is, encouraging a culture of collaboration and of innovation. And I'll tell you what I mean by that through a couple of examples. When I talk about collaboration, we spoke about having the units coming together to be able to share, to work together, to come, putting together plans, putting together assessments, etc. But it's also about, I'd like to say, a mix of competition and cooperation, like a coopetition, where your ability of people coming together, cooperating and sharing best practices, at the same time competing with each other to be able to say that, I have found new ways and innovative ways of being able to do things. And that spirit of, competition allows new innovations to come in, allows that creativity to creep into the system, which needs to be encouraged, and it's not something that will happen automatically. You need to create those kind of opportunities. So I'll give you a couple of examples on that, where, during the pandemic, for example, all schools overnight were shut, and everybody had to start working from home. What we had done is we asked each of the schools to look at ways that they can get into online learning without specifically prescribing what tools that they will use for teaching the children, and understand that this is where internet connectivity varies, whether you're in a rural area and an urban area. The infrastructure that we have kind of invested in with laptops, etc., was not the same during the pandemic. So there was a huge difference between what was available versus what can be done. And so we did not want to stop the schools from continuing to allow the child to have the learning continuity to take place. And so what we did is we gave that flexibility and freedom to the schools. Each of them took off in a very different way. But I must say that each and every school of each and every Aga Khan school was the first in their area to start off with online learning and education. And this was including in a place like a Chitrawad and a Mundra and a Sidpur and the preschools in Botad and Ranavav. I mean, these are, many of them are very remote areas where, these were things that would be, today, like this is considered that this is normal. And those days it was extremely, extremely difficult and challenging. So what we had to do is make adjustments to timetables where you do shifts for students where, it's a single family, the father has a device, and imagine these are low income groups, right? So they are living in a single room apartment, sometimes 3 kids, 4 kids in the house. So for them to be able to use that device after the father comes back home in the evening, and allowing multiple children across different grades to be able to continue to learn. These kind of challenges, the manner in which, and the teachers themselves not having their own devices in many cases, we actually then enabled some of the IT laptops and devices to be transferred to the to the teachers' homes so that they can continue their teaching and learning. And I think these were the reasons why we were able to, get started very quickly. Then we took stock 6 months later where we ensured that all the learnings across allows us to bring standardization. And I think this is an important aspect. So while you want to make sure that every unit in a chain has its own identity, we spoke about individual identity in the previous session. It's also about a chain of schools having their own identity. Yes, there will be certain standard practices. Yes, there will be certain best practices that you will share, but you will also allow nuances of that culture of that place, of that location, of the kind of parental profile that is accessing that particular school to play into the kind of operational outcomes that you're trying to achieve without compromising on the learning outcomes for the students. So I think these are some things that we try to do. During the pandemic, there were a number of other innovative ideas that came, many of them from the field, from the ground. We had one particular school that took all recycled material, throwaway material, and created a hand washing station from that. Another set of teachers got together to create masks which were for the public. So number of these initiatives, a lot of it to do with the fact that there is passion and drive, and there is a desire to make a change in the communities in which these schools are situated. And one last thing that I wanted to kind of touch upon, the culture that is created through transparency of communication. I think there is an important message there that I wanted to leave with you. I think that is where a lot of things that are happening in the different locations and different geographies are in many ways very, very challenging to deal with on the ground. At the same time, because they are, in some ways running in isolation independently at that field level, a lot of times that information, that challenge is not known to the rest of the units across chain. And I think one of the things that we did was we made sure that we had forums created where some of this sharing could take place. And this was largely to address some of the mental health issues that came up during this particular point in time, where the leaders and the next level of the schools, so section heads as well as the teachers, would get together into forums to have conversations with each other to be able to address some of the challenges that were existing at the different schools. When I'm talking about challenges, I'm not talking about routine operational challenges. These are more individual student level challenges, the mental health issues, the isolation, the aggression. We had all kinds of things that we all dealt with during that time. And I think it was very important to keep up that communication, not just a central communication that was going out to the field, but also the communication that was done amongst the different units to keep that momentum going. I think one of the things that I want to also add is the culture of fair practice, the culture of ensuring that we are giving the due dignity to the individuals that are part of the institution. There are cases where there will be, and this is whether it's an educational institution or any other corporate institution, there are cases where there will be malpractices. You will put in the appropriate controls. In a similar manner, there will be people where there will be issues amongst people as well. So how do you ensure that you are bringing in fair practices that regardless of the position of that individual, you're taking care of every single individual and safeguarding each of their interests. Similarly for students, similarly for the staff across the units. I think there is, and I think this part is something that is, it kind of runs through the Aga Khan Development Network, which is not just Aga Khan Education Service, but we have multiple entities under the Aga Khan Development Network. And it's very critical to ensure that the operations are grounded in an ethical framework that allows some of these practices to be put in place and adhered to. One last example that I want to just share is we have this centralized policy that we want to bring down the carbon footprint and the net zero impact that we have got for the environment. That is a centralized thing, and some of the things that we do will take care of it centrally as well. So we are putting in solar panels, so solarization of our schools. We are looking at sewage treatment plants to ensure that water is recycled and used for gardening purposes and so on and so forth. So those are some of the initiatives that you would do which requires heavy investments that we do centrally. But at the same time, the culture of ensuring that even the students and staff are taking responsibility for their own carbon footprint, for their own schools in which they are. And I think I'm very happy to see that a lot of it is to do with not just speaking about it, but making sure that you walk the talk. An example is like I carry my own water bottle when I'm going to school, so single-use plastic is completely out. We ensure that none of our schools use single-use plastic water bottles. The students are so aware now, thanks to some of these initiatives. They go for tree plantation drives. They will not only plant the trees, but they will nurture them, take care of them. They take responsibility and ownership for that tree till the time it has basically reached a stage of maturity. Because a lot of times, many people do tree plantation and the saplings pretty much die in the first year itself. So a lot of these kind of initiatives that allow students to take it all the way through. And a very recent incident that took place in one of our schools in Mundra, it's actually incidentally our first school, about 120 years old. And we had this where the tree branches, they need to be pruned because they grow too big so that they don't fall and become a safety hazard. So while the pruning was going on, the kids just ran and surrounded the tree thinking that we are going to cut the tree down. And we got a picture of that, which I got recently, and it really it touched my heart because, it basically shows that, whatever you're doing, wherever you're doing, your heart is in the right place, things will be fine. And our future is secure if these kids are actually taking that responsibility. That's all I have to say. Thank you so much.